To get started on this project, you should have downloaded the magazine articles zip file that has 3 different magazine articles inside of it. You're going to be responsible for only doing 2 of the 3, and any 2 that you want to pick is up to you. There's no particular order. Inside of each one of these folders, you'll find a variety of different pictures, as well as a document that has all of the text that's required for each article. Notice that in this document, I'm giving you the title and the byline, some introductory text, a couple of pull quotes, and also some body copy. The body copy has a couple of issues that need to be corrected, including double spaces, misspelled words, and also there's some subtitles that need to be formatted as well. Again, pick any 2 of the documents that you wish for your articles. To get started, we're going to create a new InDesign document from scratch. We can create a new file. The size of our document is going to be 8.5 inches wide by 11 inches tall. Do make sure Facing Pages is turned on. Now, we don't know the exact number of pages we're going to need. So for now, you can keep it any multiple of 2. I'm going to give it 8 pages just as a starting point. If we need to add more or take away, we can do it later. I'm not going to turn on a primary text frame. I'm going to do that automatically, but I'm going to keep my number of columns initially at 1. Our margins can also be set at 1/2 inch on all sides just to keep everything simple, but we'll change that up later as well. Finally, make sure you've got an 1/8 inch bleed on all sides, 0.125. When we say create, this will give us our new document as a starting point. The first thing we need to do is to set up 2 parent pages that give us a variety of different column layouts for our document. Open up your Pages panel if it's not opened already, and you may have to drag down this top portion so that you can see your parent pages. For now, by default, we've got an A parent page, so if I double-click on it, now we're in the parent page editing mode. We want to set this page up to be a 2-column structure inside of our margins. We also want to give it some headers or footers, and we want to create a couple of guidelines to create 6 columns in grids. Let's take it one step at a time. To turn this into a 2-column margin, make sure both pages are selected. Go up to your Layout, choose Margins and Columns. From here, we can set our column number to be 2. I'm going to keep the gutter at a default of 1/8 inch. You can make it a little bit bigger, but I wouldn't go any farther than 1/4 inch. If anything, maybe I'll make it a little bit from here. It's up to you how you want it to be. We don't want it to be any smaller than 1/8 inch because that tends to be a bit too small. We'll say OK to this. With this done, now we can also establish our headers at the top too before we do any other guidelines. The headers or the footers, this can go at the top or the bottom, need to include automatic page numbers and some dummy text where we can put the article's title. I'm going to zoom into this top left-hand corner, grab my type tool, and for now I'm just going to set a text box right here at the very top. To insert an automatic page number, go up to Type, down to Special Characters. This is going to be a marker for the current page number. Because we're on the A parent, the A shows up. Then you can give it a little bit of a space or some sort of a design. So I'm going to do a couple of spaces, maybe an M dash. Let's see if I can type one. There we go. And a couple of spaces, I'm going to do article title. There's that. With this established on this left side, let's also copy it over to the right side. With it selected, I'm going to drag down a guide so that I know exactly where the bottom edge is from here. I'll copy it, Command-C, scroll over to this side. Let's drag down a guide one more time, and then Command-V to paste it. Because I'm using my margins and this guide, I know exactly where things should be. To put it over on the right-hand side, first let's select our text. Let's align it to the right and reverse the order of everything. We'll copy over this automatic page number, paste it here in our little design space and set it out right here too. That looks really good. With this done, now I can also play around with the margins to give it a little bit more breathing room. I don't want this to be so close to the edge or so close to my article, so I'm going to pull my top margins down. Again, make sure both pages are selected. Go to Layout, Margins and Columns, and in our case, I'm only going to increase this top margin to give it a little bit more breathing space up there. That looks really good with that. We'll say OK. The final thing I need to do is to establish a set of 6 columns in guidelines. These 6 columns will help subdivide each of my pages and align things for later on. To do this, with both pages selected in your A parent, go to Layout. We're going to create guides. And inside of these guides, we're going to set them in between the margins, and we're going to increase our columns to be 6 columns. The gutter can be exactly the same as the gutter that we've established for our page. We could say OK to this. Now you see that we've got our 2 columns are subdivided into little 3 columns as well within each. With this done, now that we've got a 2-column parent page, let's go up to our page options. So clicking on the options and open the parent page options for this one. Let's call this the 2-column layout and say OK. Next, let's make a copy of this and do a 3-column version. With it selected, we can go up to our options. We can tell it to duplicate the parent spread. So here it is as a B parent. And all we need to do is to change up our 2 columns to a 3 columns. Again, make sure both of the pages are selected for your B parent. Go to Layout, Margins and Columns, and then let's set this number of columns to be 3. And we'll say OK to this. Everything else stays exactly the same, and if necessary, we can also rename this as a 3-column structure. So again, going here and opening the parent options for the B parent, and we'll call this the 3-column layout. Now that I've got 2 different options for both a 2 and a 3 column, I can start to play around with the layout of my article. At this time, I'm also going to save my document. So let's go up to File and Save. I'm going to save it to my desktop in a new folder. I'm going to call this my Magazine Layout folder. I'm going to call this my Magazine Articles, and then put your name on it. Make sure your format is an InDesign document and hit Save. Now we can focus on bringing in the text for each of our documents. The first thing we need to do is to choose which one we want to place. And we're going to start it on this page. I'll go up to File, down to Place. On my desktop, I have all of my articles. I'll choose just any one of them, and then I can choose the document that goes with it. It's going to follow my cursor, and I'm simply going to click and drag to create an entire text frame inside of the margins that I'm working with. Now, this first page is going to be the title page for my article. It's going to contain the title and the byline and also the introductory text. Later, on the next page, we're going to have the body copy, and we're going to sprinkle the pull quotes in the body copy. So to make things a little bit easier to deal with, I'm going to choose my Type tool, and I'm going to select all of the text that's not the body copy, all of this up here. We're going to cut it away, so go to Edit and Cut. And let's put a text box outside of this area to paste it into. Edit and Paste. Oops. There we go. With this, let's jump our text to the next page. Carefully click on the little plus sign at the bottom for the output. It'll follow your cursor. Let's go to the next spread. You could hold Shift and click inside the margins, and that'll automatically make 2 page columns. Or you can click and drag, and I like to do it this way. Later on, I'll divide it up into whatever column structure I need. Since this fits nicely here, I'm okay with this. Now before we move on, there's a couple of things we need to fix with our text. We've got double spaces, we need to have a first line indent, and we need to do some spell checking. So to correct this, let's go up to Edit, down to Find and Change, and let's see if we can find all of our double spaces and replace them with a single space. Under the Text submenu, choose Find What, and let's choose 2 end of paragraphs. There they are set here. We can change them to a single end of paragraph, and we're going to do this for the entire story. When I do Change All, you can see how it'll replace all of them, and then now all of my text looks really nice. So that's going good for there. The other thing we can do while we've got it is let's do some spell checking. Under Edit, go down to Spelling, and let's check our spelling. Remember, some words are common words and some words may be names, and so we want to make sure we've got the correct things in here. Lutherer is actually a correctly spelled word. It's just not in here. So I'm going to add it or ignore it. This is a person's name, so I'm going to ignore those. Name, pilgrimage, that's misspelled. So there's this one, and we'll change it. Lutherers, I can ignore all of those. There's a name. Mightive, M-I-G-A-T apostrophe V. Yeah, that's correct. We can ignore that one. There's one we could ignore. Cell phone. Let's correct that one. This is a person's name. Eyeing, that's actually a correct word, so we could ignore that one. He, this is coming up because they think it needs to be capitalized. We're going to skip that one. We'll ignore the name and just go through and do all of these. Signature. A fretless, that's, you can ignore that one. There, needs an apostrophe. And now we're done. Now, before I move forward, let's establish a body copy that we can use. You can keep it at the default sans serif font of Arial or Myriad Pro. That is a nice readable one, but I'm going to go for a serifed font. First, I'm only going to select this first paragraph, and I triple-clicked in order to quickly select that. A great font to be able to use would be something like Minion Pro, or even Times New Roman, or anything like this. That's looking pretty good, so I'll keep it at this. The size of my font, I'll keep it at either 11 or maybe 12. I'm going to set my leading to be a little bit more spaced out. I think 13 or 14 looks good for this. The other thing I can do is if I go to my paragraph settings, I want the first line to be indented on all of my body copies. So I'm going to increase this number, which is my first line indent. Usually no more than 1/4 of an inch, but definitely no less than 1/8 of an inch. So somewhere between here, about the size of a capital M is the general rule of thumb. The final thing I need to do is establish my baseline grids for all of my body copy. With everything selected on this one, to turn on baseline grids, first we need to show our baseline grids. Let's go up to View, down to Grids and Guides, and Show Baseline Grid. I can see that my grid is established, but I need to set it up so that it's the same as my leading. Remember, your leading on this is whatever this number is. So in my case, it's 13. Yours may be slightly different. We'll go to the InDesign's Preferences, and let's open up your Grids Preferences. From here, set your baseline grids increment every to match your leading. In this case, 13. In my case, I'm going to set it relative, to the page. And we'll say OK to that. With that done, now I can see that it's set and turned on. I can return to my paragraph formatting controls. And over on the far right-hand side, make sure this option is checked on. This will automatically align your text to that baseline grid for all of the characters, regardless what column it's in. Now that I've established this first paragraph as my body copy, let's save it up as a paragraph style. Under Type, choose Paragraph Styles. I've got it selected, so let's make a new paragraph style. I'll call this Body Copy. Oops. We'll apply it to the style of the selection. There we go for here. The other thing I can do is also establish the look and feel of my subheads. Let's scroll down and find a subhead. Here it is here. Subheads simply need to be vastly different from our body copy. And there's a couple of things we could do. First, I could keep it as a serif to contrast with the, as a sans serif to contrast with the serif font that I have. I'm going to do that for this one. So I want to keep it at Arial, nice and bold. Maybe I'll make it a couple of points bigger. So 15 points seems to be pretty good for that. Also, our subheads do not need to be aligned to our baseline grid. This will come in handy when we start to wrap our text inside of columns, and it'll give it a little bit more flexibility. Also, we can have it established to have its own leading, and that leading can be different from our baseline grid too. So with this done, I'm going to set it to this. Notice that it doesn't have any first line indent as well. I'm going to create a new paragraph style. I'm going to call this the subhead. We'll apply it to that selection too. Now it's a simple matter of selecting all of my body copy and applying the body copy, and then selecting all of my subheads and applying the subheads. There's a body copy, there's a subhead, here's a subhead, and body copy. Take some time now and go through and format everything so that it looks nice and fits well inside of what you've got.